Okay, so today is Wednesday, the 14th of October 2020. It's just past 9 o'clock, and here we are in EDU 322 on our last day of Zoom intensive equivalent, Zoom equivalent intensive, or something like that. Before we kick off today, I thought of a question. All of you are studying online to some degree, some totally, some have some connection through this Zoom, and I'm thinking other subjects as well. So here's my question. I would like you to write down for 3 minutes, and I'll pause the recording, but 3 minutes to just write down some thoughts on how you study, what makes study, I suppose particularly for this subject, but for all subjects, what are the key ingredients of successful study for you? What aspects do you need to consider when contemplating the successful completion of a subject in term 4 2020? So there we go. 3 minutes, pausing now, and then I'm going to come back to you and ask you what you've got on your list, and then I'll share what I've got on my list. Bye. So who would like to go first? Did I see that hand? Go for it. Chris, what would you say are key aspects of study, successful study?
I think in regards to this particular subject, the predominant thing for me would be to ensure that I carved out sufficient reflection space. I've actually got to have some stop time and prioritize that stop time. Stop and think time.
Anything else on your list?
No, that's the only one really.
Okay, you're breaking up. You must have gone into a tunnel. Tamara, go for it. Oh, I can't hear you.
There we go. Sorry. So I've got 4 things on mine, although I'm a bit iffy about the last one. So my main thing is, have I learnt something? Because obviously that's why you're studying, that's why you're doing what you're doing, is to learn something. And then the next thing that I've got is a mindset growth. So for me, when you learn something new, it changes the way you think. So your mind grows in a sense. And whether or not your mindset growth has changed the way you see something or not is a byproduct. But so long as that growth is there, I think it's successful. There's also the understanding aspect. So like you can go through and you can learn stuff and not actually understand what you've learned. So for me, there's got to be that understanding of what you've learned. And I've got collaboration down, but I think that's more because that links in more with the mindset growth, because most of the time when you allow for collaboration, that's when your perspectives change or your mind grows that extra bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You are very articulate, Tamara. Thank you. Love it. And then here's another compliment. You're absolutely transparent. And that is
Thank you.
So I think it's so important, actually, for a teacher to be able to take the mask down and be real. But that's a bit of an aside. Emily, let me give you a few more seconds, Emily, but Andrew's just joined us. So what we're doing is we're having a bit of a brainstorm on key factors or key issues, things that come to mind when we think about how are we going to be successful in the study of a subject like this one in Term 4 2020. What ingredients do you need to have in your kit bag to make this a successful subject for you, or another subject, whichever one you're doing? What are the key ingredients for success at study, particularly, I guess, in the online environment? Emily.
So my thoughts were probably a little bit more practical. Like, I think obviously it's a really good idea that we reflect and that we think about like what is being taught. But I think I was thinking more along the lines of how do I get my assessments done? But so I think for me, completing this course successfully, I guess, looks like putting all like due dates or lecture dates in my diary and making sure that I allow time for those things and that I don't double book myself as well. And also I warn myself like each week, like you have assessments coming up like the previous week. I just ensure that I'm like on top of my work as much as I can be. So if I miss lectures like I have the past few ones, that I watch them as soon as I can, so I don't fall behind. When I make time to do my assessments, I have to allow myself time to get motivated because it takes me forever to actually get into the mode of writing. Before I begin an assessment or study, I commit it to God and put it in His hands, and ultimately my success is in His hands, and that I find it easier to write when it is in God's hands, not just mine. And I also make sure that I ensure that I actually understand, well, I try to ensure that I understand the assessment before I begin it, otherwise I'll get halfway through and stuff up. That's
Excellent. You done?
Yep.
Thank you, Emily. Andrew, any key issues for successful study in your mind?
If I think back to what I did in my last course, I felt very pressured, especially in the last two assignments when we had two assignments due at the same time. And on top of that, we had work and other issues at home and everything else going on. And it's like what Emily said, really, if I really need to lock in those times and be very disciplined about it. But one of the issues I had in the final assessment last term was I just had a mind block because I just had so many things in my head happening. Really, I wasn't able to think really clearly. So at the end, it was just a rush job to put everything together. And like Emily said, I didn't really read the question properly, where I was telling people about what, I thought this was what my philosophy of education, when I should have been saying it was my philosophy of education rather than this is what I thought it should be. That was a bit of a muddle up, and but yeah, you learn from that and you move on. Yeah, and like Emily said too, praying. I found that sometimes praying does actually help, especially when you got a total mind block.
Yeah. Fantastic. Look, I really appreciate that, and the fact that some of you have come at it from the perspective of the assignments, and Chris kicked off with she's got to find place for deep reflection, particularly for this subject. In busy lives, that's a huge challenge, I understand. And Well, I wrote down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 dot points, and between you, you've covered off 4 of them, which I find fascinating. So my first one was routine. Have you established a routine for your study? So routine / the when. The routine as in what time of day is best for you, and rather than focusing, 3 weeks out, I've got an assignment. Sure. But can you carve out chunks, say a Tuesday night, say a Saturday afternoon, whatever it is, something regular and routine. Now that might be my learning style and it may not be yours, but you've got to know, and that was another of my dot points, do you know how you learn? And you've really got to be ruthless with yourself, I believe. Look at the section on how leaders learn, and there may be some great tips there for how you can successfully manage assignments and how you can manage these courses. So routine. Where. Number 2 is my where. Now for me, where is so crucial. I've got a wife at home who doesn't understand boundaries. And if I'm studying in my office and she wants to do something on the computer, fine. There's no such thing as, oh, are you working, Jim? Oh, I don't want to disturb you. Is it okay? No. Schwung. She's straight in. So last couple of weeks, I've managed to turn my caravan, which I haven't been able to use, into my office. So that has all my assignments all over the place, and it's my space, and she doesn't come in there, and yay, I'm not going to get disturbed. I'm going to go to work now. See you, love. God bless. See you tonight. And it's so important to know where you're going to study. Number 3, what do you do when you're studying and you've got questions? Now, I've often said to people, I think there are 2 sorts of people, maybe 3 in the course. People who are always posting, always ringing me up, always sending me emails. And I suspect the majority of the people who do that get good marks. Now, you might think you're being a pain, and you probably are. But the number of times I've really had to, I don't recall ever having to say to anybody, you're a pain. You're bothering me too much. Sometimes I say, look, this email should have been on the news forum because it's relevant to other people. So come on, I'll copy and paste it and put it in there for you. But next time, put it in there yourself, will you? Save me the trouble. So learn what to do with your questions. And what about your peers? Because I often find that when I get into busy periods, that the news forum, people have put questions on there and other people are answering. I don't want to encourage you to use the other forums, the social forums or whatever, which I never check. I'm totally happy for you to use the general class forum to gain a community. And it's not just necessarily me or your lecturer who's going to give you the answer. It could very well be somebody else. Because if it's a crucial question, you're almost stuck, you're paralyzed until you get an answer. And it's so annoying. And I basically have to give a commitment that 3 days turnaround, but that might be far too long for some of you. So that's another of my points. Are there people in your community with whom you can share? Don't just think you're in this submarine at the bottom of the greatest, deepest ocean, and nobody else you can't tell anybody else what you're doing. Get out there, communicate with your sphere, become a learning community, share the assignment with your mates, with your family. Hey, what do you think this means? Talk about it at lunchtime. Talk about it at tea time. Have a dynamic learning immersion in a community. I love the idea that that can happen, and it's not just you isolated at the end of an internet connection that might fall out any moment. And then you'll die. Boom. No, you're part of something that is across the world. Today I'm writing an email to Alex Breen in Croatia or Serbia or something. I mean, I just find that fascinating. I don't know what time of day it is. You must be just going to bed. But it's just incredible that there he is in a school context and he's learning in that context. So be aware of the wideness. It's not isolation, it's wideness. Organize your notes. Do you organize your notes? Do you make notes? Or do you just write assignments? I would love to think that these courses can become folders that go with you through your career. And that's another bit of a worry at the back of my mind, is that Moodles tend to close. And I don't know when the powers that be do that. So if there's anything particularly important, download it, store it, keep it safe, and then there's no issues. We've closed the Moodle. Well, get it out there now, okay? Application for your profession. I think that if you're learning and it's not in the context of, how would I use that? When can I use that? To me, that's a vital sort of throughput. If you're just downloading it in here and this is where it stays, and you're not, well, that's actually no use to me at all. I'm never going to bother using that again. So make sure there's an output where you might possibly use that. And that will, I think, keep the thing from going stagnant. And my last one, which you've already touched on, but I'm getting excited about. I think it was Tamara who used the word understanding. I so love that. It's not learning. You know, anybody can learn anything, anytime. And especially with the internet, you can learn anything, anywhere, anytime. That's so hum. But understanding is a different kettle of fish. And if it's understood, then I believe it will stay. If it's learned, it will be forgotten. Okay? So please get into understanding. And then the assignments will just flow. They won't be a big drama at all. And yes, Andrew, you've got to be ruthless with your calendar. And Emily, thank you for your calendar. Because if you find you've got 2-4 assignments on the one day, 6th of December, and you're there on the 5th, you've stuffed up. You've stuffed up. You've got to get your own deadlines. And for 10 years now, people have been saying to me, Jim, you've got all these assignments due on the same day. It's so unfair. And I say, good. That's what will happen in life. You'll get pressure, so you've got to organize yourself. And if you're a teacher, you've got to be organized. No good pleading, I've got too many deadlines. Sorry. I'm done. Got that off my chest. Any questions? Okay, you're muted, Andrew. And okay, so what I would love to do today is share a screen. Oh, maybe there's one thing. There's one thought that maybe hasn't come out, and that is silly analogy, maybe poor analogy, but maybe it'll make the point. When a young puppy is being trained, I would argue the trainer is absolutely crucial. The trainer sets the time. All right, the young puppy's bowels set another time, but the trainer is crucial. Would you not agree? Now, I would hate to think that you students are young puppies being trained. No, no, I don't think so. I would like to think that you're wise, experienced mummy and daddy puppies, dogs, who are training their young. So you are in charge of your learning and your understanding. Grasp your understanding with your both hands. It's your timing, it's your course. Basically, think of your lecturer, your tutor, as a resource, one of many, and not the big instigator. I would love to think that at the end of your course, your lecturer is insignificant and you have become a teacher, and your lecturer has disappeared and gone on to other things. Okay, so please don't idolize lecturers and think that they have to give you everything, because they don't. And they're also fallible and they make mistakes. So make sure you find their mistakes. Okay, are we sitting comfortably? Sort of, maybe. So where do I go to share this screen, Jim? You can do this. And there. Okay. Renovation of the Heart 2. And you better interrupt, and I wouldn't mind asking you to mute, but that's probably unlikely. Probably more likely to ask you to unmute. Renovation of the Heart 2. Page 3. I've written down, first question for you. Chariots of Fire, which I guess all of you know the movie. Or know of the movie. And the big quote, the big Bible quote in the middle of all that from Isaiah, mounting up with wings as eagles. Mounting up with wings as eagles. Now, what a metaphor that is. What a metaphor. Do somebody talk to me about what you understand that quote from Isaiah to be. So if you can imagine yourself, this Olympic runner is thinking about how he might succeed in the Olympics on a running track. And he's thinking about Isaiah and that metaphor, mounting up with wings as eagles. What does that mean to you? Chris, you got to unmute. Yeah.
Yeah, I was in central Queensland last week, and there are many wedge-tailed eagles out soaring around, and I had this amazing experience to watch a parent eagle trying to teach its young how to soar and fly. And I had never ever seen this before, but it was the most incredible thing. Like this wedge-tailed eagle was soaring, and it had the tiny small eagle basically in its slipstream and going up, and then once it got to a certain height, it would then duck away and allow the fledgling eagle to kind of experience that soaring, flying sensation. And then suddenly you'd see the tiny eagle, and it was very, very tiny. You'd see it flap like a wild thing. Like it was just, well, it was wild, but it just flapped mercilessly, hands on the steering wheel. particularly as I'm driving past a police car. It was just flapping madly, and then the parent eagle would allow it to flap stupidly and then come down below it and just slide in underneath and let the little tiny fledgling eagle sit on its back. And the older eagle would then go right up high again and repeat the process. I watched it for about a half an hour, just in mind-blown awe of the fact that this was the process, that the parent eagle would piggyback the baby eagle up into the heights and then allow the baby eagle to learn how to soar. It was stunning. It brought a whole new concept to mount up on wings like eagles.
Chris, that is fantastic. Anyone else? Follow that. Ha! If you can. You see, to me, one of the things in there is soaring on wings as eagles. And I'm very conscious of the fact that when eagles are doing that, they're not flapping their wings. They're simply gliding and using the hot air that's rising as a lift, which is so beautiful. And it's a bit like the concept of the sweet spot. Do you know what I mean? When you're there, you know you're there. And when you're not, you're struggling like crazy to get there. So going back to Emily's point, pray that you will be shown the right way to go and the right point to let go and let God. Because please, in this course, don't rely on flapping your wings. Yes, you have to flap your wings an awful lot as a teacher, of course you do. But also, you've got the additional support of the Holy Spirit to lift you and give you a respite, if you like, an opportunity to just reflect on, wow, this is awesome. What a responsibility I've got. And guess what? I'm in partnership. This is not me alone. I couldn't do this on my own. Wow. Keeps you humble. Okay. So it's an incredibly important scripture to me, that one. And also, yes.
Also, Jim.
Yes.
My mind kind of went more towards as eagles are taking off. They're being hunters. They're always aware of what's going on around them. And the way that they take off is, I don't know if you guys have ever been to bird shows. Oh, it's, they jump and they don't, when they're taking off, they don't tend to kind of flap. So it kind of they kind of leap forward, and then it's like they can see the air current, and they just sort of, they allow it to carry it along, and only sort of really flap their wings as they're coming into land.
Okay. What's bird shows? Is that a place?
No. So, if you go to, there's a lot of places that do bird,
bird
have
shows.
bird shows that actually come in.
I thought you said bird shows.
No. Bird shows where they'll bring in a whole bunch of birds, and eagles are usually one of them.
Oh.
And they always bring them out so that way their eyes are hidden.
Yeah.
Always. They will never bring them out without the eyes hidden. And if you have an animal, you have to keep the animal still when they're doing the eagles.
Wow.
just because they are so aware of their surroundings.
Yeah.
That any slight movement can actually pull their attention away from where they're supposed to be going to what it is. And because eagles are big prey, dogs tend to.
Sure. Tamara, I think you've hit a nail, and that is being aware. One of an anecdote of mine when I'm watching students in their final prac or any prac, and they find themselves in a classroom with their back to some of the students. They can't know what's happening in the classroom when that's happening. So somehow or other, you've got to make sure that in your movement around the room, that you are absolutely aware of everything that's happening, both with your students and external, whether there's distractions or whatever from outside the classroom. You've got to have your eyes and antenna, more than eyes, so closely attuned to everything, the slightest incident. So thank you. Page 3 then. What do we do when we're wronged? What do we do when someone wrongs us? I guess that may have happened to some of us sometimes. And I don't know, maybe this is a hypothetical question. Yes, it probably ought to be because of the time. But do consider what you're going to do in your teaching profession when you're wronged, because I can guarantee you will be, and probably by people, and it's worse when it's by people close to you. And it's through no malicious intent, I guess, although it could be, but you end up being wronged or being taken advantage of. And what do you do about that? I'm thinking of the final assignment, where for some of you that could be a big issue. I'm talking to people who are not online now. Some people, I would say, are prone to taking offense, on a scale of taking offense easily versus those who water off a duck's back. Where are you? And you know, if you are one who takes offense easily, what can you do about that to minimize the impact? Because while you're hurt, you're not going to be much use to other people. You should be like a one-legged bird. Okay. Moving right on to page 4. Transforming my mind's thoughts. Now, I found the ideas on this page helpful. We have the freedom and power to select what we allow our minds to dwell on. You know, are we going to let our minds dwell on hurt, for example? There are 4 aspects of what works here. Ideas are abstract. Images are concrete. Information, our ability to think, relies on the fuel of information.
There's a Woodford picture.
Hello?
The child has just got in someone's iPad.
Oh, I see. Thank you for that. Your contribution was appreciated. So I found that in terms of our mind's thoughts, let me just ramble for a second. I suspect that more often than not, my normal mind's operation, I believe, or I think, is not in my control. It's, you know, maybe I can't sleep one night because thoughts are just buzzing around and they won't go away. Oh, I'm a victim of my thoughts. But the Bible says, take your thoughts captive. And I believe we can and should let our thoughts, you know, be able to take our thoughts captive. So ideas, images, information. Our ability to think relies on the fuel of information. Now, oh boy, here goes. Are you sitting comfortably? I hope so. I'm about to launch into something that I'm a bit nervous about, I'll be honest. Here goes. Here we are in the world, all of us, and what we think with our mind is actually dependent on the fuel of the information that we're fed. You'd agree. The context where we've been born, the environment we move in, the community that we live in, all these feed information and therefore color the way we think. I'm wanting to put on the table COVID-19 and the way we think about COVID-19. Now, I seem to be aware that nobody that I'm aware of in my world is able to have a conversation about it. I try to talk about COVID-19 in my family and I get shut down because other people have opposing views to me. So I need to name my position. I'm not saying COVID-19 is just another flu, but I am very cranky about the fact that millions of people's lives, particularly the poor, are being negatively impacted through the lockdown, killing the economy approach that many nations in the world are taking. So I would be much more of a Sweden model, look after the aged, everybody be sensible, but above all, everybody have freedom to do what they believe to be right, rather than to be told by a government what to do and be heavily fined if you don't. I'm pretty nervous as a democratic citizen that our freedoms are being eroded. And it's a shame, I believe, that most of the media isn't allowing this conversation to happen, because they've got one set of information and they're not giving any more. And that's the narrative, and you play that narrative, that's it, one view. Now, I've probably said too much. Oh, Chris is sitting down. She's done her hour and a half commute already, and she's about to go into court. So, okay, so briefly, would you like to comment on COVID-19, and dare I ask you, are you going to talk to me ever again?
I actually agree with you, Jim. I'm in the same position as you. I think it's a bit over the top, considering that the number of deaths, if you like, is well below 2% in the majority of countries that we're talking about. And I've been reading up on a lot of the other things behind how deaths are sometimes classified as COVID-19 related when it's really not. It's just that if someone dies in an aged care facility because it's automatically classified as a COVID-19 death. But I've since talked to a couple of policemen here, and they said, how do you carry out investigations? In Queensland anyway, they do a very thorough check to make sure that it is actually COVID-19. So our cases in Australia is a lot less because they go through that check compared to a lot of other countries that don't.
But Andrew, to the point here of page 4,
mm-hmm.
and the information
Mm-hmm.
that, and relate this scenario we're painting, I've brought up COVID-19, relate that now to how you teach and how you manage yourself going forward, in the context of the fuel of information.
Oh, how would I teach? I guess if I were to teach this about COVID-19, is that what you're asking me about?
Oh, no, I'm not. I'm just sorry. I'm asking you to reflect on the impact of filtered or unfiltered information for the way we think and the way we expect our students to think. I'm not talking about specific scenarios. I'm just thinking about the whole, how our minds work.
Right.
And are we ruthless with ensuring we've got the relevant information, fuel, to make our minds work right? Or are we going to play a story that is based on, if you like, purely refined fuel?
Mm-hmm. Okay, I guess with everything, you have to exercise wisdom. For example, it's quite easy to be shut down, as you have said yourself. I think it's like what Peter said, to be prepared to give an answer for the reason for your faith with all gentleness and goodness and kindness. So we do that, but we do not fear. I try not to fear anyway. I'm at the university where I could be, quite often I do post things that it's contradictory to what's happening here. For example, posting things about, we've got a multicultural or multi-faith center. We've been forced to go that particular way. It used to be a Christian chaplaincy before. But because of all the political fights happening, they said it should be a multi-faith, and we were quite okay with that.
Yeah.
But surprisingly, the only people who really attend or really provide any services to the students are the Christian chaplains.
Yeah.
The Muslim chaplains have disappeared. The Buddhist chaplains have disappeared. They're nowhere to be seen. And we've got people who actually say that whenever we post something, it's like, oh, this is terrible. We can't have this happening here, simply because it has a Christian connotation to it.
Yeah.
So I guess it's stating the truth with gentleness, giving without, how would I say, being humble as well, that they can read through what you say, what you put on paper, that you are not there to fight. You're there to service, to encourage, to put faith into people.
Yeah.
So I guess that's where I would come from. I would say, well, I will share the truth with you.
Sure.
But I'm not going to force it on you, but I will share to you, and you can see it in my being that I'm not being, how would I say, antagonistic.
Sure.
Anyway, I'm doing it with gentleness, but at the end of the day, you can provide all that information. I think information is key. And then you have to go and decide whether what I've given you is actually true.
Amen.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andrew. You're obviously a good thinker about these things and
really?
wrestling with them. Anyone else? Emily, I see you're unmuted.
I don't like. Obviously, I think I've said before that I don't think I know enough information to have like an opinion on COVID. However, I kind of think like, because I live in Victoria and obviously we've been in lockdown, we're slowly coming out, but I think just seeing the results of being in lockdown is like being super good, from having 700 cases to now, like today I think we had 7 cases. I feel like there has been like an obvious improvement. Like I know some of them, there's controversy as to whether some of the deaths are from COVID or just people who would have died anyway or whatever.
Yeah.
But I still think, I don't know, I feel like the lockdown was probably a bit strict, but I kind of feel like it was somewhat necessary to get the cases down. But I don't know. Like,
well, Emily, I'm not going to thank you for sharing. I'm not going to prolong this thought, but I'm trying to focus in on the very fact that the first thing you said was you're not sure, you don't have enough information. Now, therefore, the way your mind is ticking, and I would argue, but this is particularly true of kids in school, they want to be told what to think, how to think. And arguably, yes, young people need to be trained in how to think. But one of the things we need to do as adults is to gain confidence that we really know what we know and why we know what we know. So Emily, my encouragement to you in a bungling sort of way is do a bit more research and be really super critical of the lines of information that are being fed to you. Are you sure? Can you hand on heart say, I am sure that the information is not just within an information bubble and therefore it's self-perpetuating? Or have I really gone to look at opposing views to get other bits of information? And as Andrew started pointing out, his first comment was about people being classified as COVID death when it's COVID plus something else. The other had some other comorbidity. So, it's really, really difficult to compare data with one country and another. When do you have any confidence that the data has been is comparable? And you can't have that confidence. But one thing you can have, I would argue, is enough confidence to say, yeah, I know enough about this to have my view, and therefore I'm not going to be dependent on somebody telling me what I need to think. Chris?
Yeah, I like what you guys are saying. I think from my point of view, when I'm working in a classroom environment, I'd be keen to hear what people who are in that room would want to say, and where their understanding, perhaps the world might say, where their truth is at this particular point in time. What is their current understanding of it? Because the way I see the situation may be entirely different. For me, COVID has been about the fact that when there has been, on the few occasions, there has been lockdowns in Queensland, I haven't been able to go and see my mum, who's just been put in aged care. So I have a passionate personal perspective. For kids in a classroom, it may well be that they haven't been able to go and visit grandma or whatever it may well be. And that's their truth, that's their reality. So I'm keen, again, a little bit like yesterday's discussion over justice v. injustice. It's kind of like, okay, what do you see? What do you think's going on? And are there any other views? And let's see if we can work together to see if there's something that some things that we can bring together into a common space, which for students may have come in part from their families or, contributions around the dining table. But I think it's important to give everyone that opportunity to find their space.
Yeah, love it. Thank you. Tamara, anything to add?
I'm Western Sydney, so a lot of the times when I go out, I mean, COVID's always on the back of my mind because I am pregnant now. I have a lower immune system. I have a baby that I now have to worry about, in the sense where if I get sick, those germs and my antibodies are then going to be transferred to the child. So if I don't have the antibodies or my body can't fight what's going on, there is a chance that Bub's going to be affected. So each time I go out, it is there at the back of my mind going, okay, so, I want to maintain this 1.5 meter distance because I'm also asthmatic. I can't wear your traditional masks that go from here to here. It doesn't allow me enough time to breathe. So I've actually bought a mask that my husband refers to as kind of like a criminal mask. So it hooks around my ears and it goes from here down to rest on top of my chest. So that way air can, and it's a breathable material. So that way air can still flow in and out. But I've found that people just they think COVID doesn't exist anymore. Like at shopping centers and stuff. So they'll brush up against me and they'll get in my personal bubble space, and it's pretty much as bad as Christmas shopping almost, especially down at Mount Druitt Westfield. I at the moment I'm really paranoid about going down there because Mount Druitt Westfield has had 3 cases that I know of where someone's come in with COVID. They've gone and had the COVID test. They've sent them home, but instead of just going straight home, they've gone to the shops on the way home. And they're in the shops for 3-4 hours. And I'm sitting there going, if you think you've got it, why are you then going out and spreading it more when you know it's not just a standard cold? Like who wouldn't be kicking up this much of a stink if it was just your standard cold? Like there is so much going on regarding it to the point where I'm almost sick of COVID at this point because it's drowning out all the other news articles. Like I almost missed the story about how the government wants to buy the rights for the Indigenous flag. I don't know if you guys heard about that.
No.
Did you guys hear about that?
Please tell.
So, the Indigenous flag was originally designed by an Indigenous person to support all the injustices going on that the Indigenous people were facing in the Throne in the 1960s. So that person owns the rights to the flag. So each time the flag is done at sporting events or any corporate event, he has to get paid royalties because he owns it. Now the government want to buy the rights from the person, so that way no one has to pay out the royalties for events. Because what triggered this was someone wanted to do, for some big corporate event, they wanted to have the Indigenous flag, and either they didn't do the right channels and they showed the flag anyway, or because they hadn't prepped it enough, they couldn't do the flag. So this caused a bit of a stink, which then got people thinking, well, how come it couldn't be there? And it led to this investigation where they're like, the government's like, well, now we want to buy the royalties for it. So I was like, because of all this COVID stuff, so many other stories that probably should take precedence aren't getting the attention that they need, because something else is taking the limelight.
Being crowded out.
Yeah.
Tamara,
Yes.
thank you for that, and thank you for bringing into another piece of information that I was unaware of. And you're quite right. The airwaves have been saturated with COVID, to the exclusion of most others. Moving on, page 5. Now, a bit of a side story. This photo you can see here of an icon, I believe the phrase is, of Mary and baby Jesus. I took it. Does anybody know where I took this photograph? Okay, I'll tell you. It's on the wall / roof of the Sophia Mosque in Istanbul, Turkey, which I find an incredibly weird, wonderful place. Operating as a museum when we were there in 2005, but originally built as a Christian place of worship. Then it became Islamic, and even throughout all its centuries of Islamization, there are loads and loads of Christian artifacts still inside. And then this year, Tamara, do you know the news? That this museum has now been turned back to be a Muslim mosque again, which I find ironic, and I pray that the various Christian icons will remain inside, even if it does get used as a mosque for now. Anyway, bit of trivia, and also the very fact that Willard and Frazee talk about icons. Now, I've never grown up personally using the word icons. It's not part of my language. But for people who've grown up in the Catholic faith, it would be quite normal, or Orthodox faith, I suspect. But having said that, I suspect that, going back to the previous page, images are quite important, whether subconscious or conscious, for our faith journey. And maybe icons could be of importance to you. I lay that out there. Anyway, just a quick look at page 5. These are some thoughts about what, without the means to transform our mind's thoughts, our vision and intentions are useless. There are 3 practical disciplines that can help: memorizing and meditating, icons and iPods. I'm not sure what an iPod means there. And mentors and memoirs. I really love reading biographies of famous Christian missionaries or whatever. It's one of my, and their stories have become almost like a beacon, a flashing light down the runway for me at times. And I would highly recommend to you putting biographies into your life if you don't already. And moving on, because I needed to get further down the track. Now, I love this photo for various reasons, which I'll briefly allude to. As you know, pictures mean an awful lot to me. This one here, to me, this photo of a fence, I think it's a broken down stile, if you know the word stile, where you can climb safely over a barbed wire fence without injuring yourself. But it's been adapted, adopted, modified, repaired many times. It's got a lot of history, and the timber you can see is really old and highly weathered, but it seems to sort of make the shape of a cross in some shape and form, and the rusting, the barbed wire seems to conjure up for me the crown of thorns on Jesus' head as he was crucified. So to me, this broken down icon, if you like, means a lot. And on page 7, the bottom of page 7, the 1 and 2 there, what works? Cultivating feelings that move us away from bad situations. Here's the power of vision. See ourselves free from negative feelings and removing the underlying condition or cause, not just the feeling which is the effect. The underlying condition is something that causes something else to happen. So cultivating good environments, communities, friends, and politely removing bad influences, and making sure that we don't just deal with surface level feelings, but what's the actual cause of those feelings, trying to remove those. I'll shush there for any comments that anyone might want to make in terms of transforming the way you feel.
I think for most of the time for transformation, in terms of feelings and that sort of stuff, it usually tends to be either a witnessing or an experience of an extreme. I see you're really confused, so I'll explain it. So I feel like a lot of people tend to have opinions on stuff, and they've got these ideas about if they were confronted with this injustice or this situation going on, that this is how they would react. But having been through a transformational experience myself, it's not the case at all. Like, you sit there and you take it and you take it and you take it until you break. And it's only at breaking point that you're like, okay, something needs to change. And most of the time you don't even realize you're at breaking point until someone says something to you. Be it a friend, be it a teacher, be it a workmate. Someone that has noticed that you're at breaking point actually turns around and they say, look, you need help, or you need to, look at yourself and, see what needs to change. And most of the time for transformational stuff, people are more likely to transform when it's an experience. But I know that if they're witnessing an extreme, that can change it as well. So like, for example, people who might have been okay with, or they thought that they were like, if they witnessed, say for example, exploitation of women, linking it back to yesterday, that they would step in and they'd be like, okay, this is how you do it. Or say for example, domestic abuse. Okay, so, you know, I'm going to be that friend that they need. You know, I'm going to be their shield if they need me to be their shield. But then the situation comes along and they're witnessing it and they're like, it's only when that person is in imminent danger that they step in.
Sure.
But for all the times before that, unless it's happened right before their eyes, like they're hearing it and they're like, oh yeah, no, I'll totally be your friend. But they've still allowed it to continue.
Yeah.
Like they haven't actually, I think it's that idea of, because it's not happening before their eyes, it can't change you because you're not seeing it.
Yeah.
They have to see it in order for them to go, oh, hang on, no, this isn't right.
Tamara, brilliant. Thank you. Which is a lovely segue to page 9. Do I mean page 9? Personal audit. How are you traveling? So going on from what you were saying, Tamara, give yourself some quiet, reflective time. It may be painful to conduct a personal audit, but the benefits are profound. This scaffolding to structure your reflections, pardon my English. So I'm not saying you do this now, but I would argue it would be in preparation for both the minor and the major assignment, and for this course in general, and for becoming a teacher. It would be good to do a personal audit of a whole bunch of areas of your life. So, for example, number 7, your dreams and passion. I mean, you've got to be absolutely sure that teaching is for you. And if it's not your ideal dream or passion, then make sure you don't go into it. I'll tell you a story of somebody I spoke with this year. They were questioning whether or not teaching was the way to go. And I was poking in the conversation. What are you most passionate about? And they said, well, actually, I want to write a book. Okay, then write a book. And don't put yourself through the pain of thinking that your next career move has to be teaching. And it's almost as if that conversation, going back to tomorrow's discussions, I hope and pray was the turning point for that person, that they could get their life career development on track without any uneasiness, and everything's now in balance again. So I think if people do this too often, I think we become narcissistic and go down a hole of self-pity probably. But to do a personal audit now and again, particularly in the light of having to do the personality profiles, I think is a good thing. To take a deep breath and say, okay, where are we going with all this? Because above all, in these assignments, I really, really, really want you to be real. That's the most important thing. And you'll interrupt me, I know, if you need to. Page 13. Means to transform my heart. 1 to 4. These, yeah, I'm not going to go through them, but have a look at page 13 in your own time. Chris's first comment about solitude, definitely program that in. Fasting, warning, do not pursue this if there's any potential for an ongoing eating disorder. I personally would encourage occasional fasting. At one point this year, I was doing a 3-4 diet, as in 3 days, 4 days of eating in a week and 3 days not. And was it a health thing? Yes. So alternate days. But it was also a spiritual thing, and I found it really rewarding to sharpen my spiritual antenna when I'm not overfed. Worship, service, and we talked about that yesterday, being a healthy antidote. Page 16. Means to transform your body. Now, this little list here, I find, has a big relationship to the action plan at the end of the major assignment, where you've done your audit, you've worked out, yeah, sure, I need to do this, I need to have this built into my life, otherwise resilience isn't going to be there, and I'm going to be on the scrap heap in 5 years. So what do I need to build in for the long haul? And these do's and don'ts, I think, are very helpful. Particularly, I would stress on the right-hand side here, sleep. Enough sleep and good sleep, which means you don't eat and have calorific intake too close to going to bed, otherwise you won't sleep very well. I know that from experience. And 17. Now, I find this activity, I would encourage you to do the activity. Take a sheet of paper, draw a big circle. Now think of the people in your life, family, friends, co-workers, pastors, teachers, neighbors, and so on. Draw a figure, a little stick figure, for each person and give each a name. What does your circle look like? Lots of figures? Only a few? Consider what your circle says about you and about your social life. If the circle is filled to the edge with people, how many of them do you have a meaningful relationship with? If there are few, why is that? Knowing the answers to this will be key to renovating your social life. Just a thought. And finally, 20. Transforming your soul. I commend 1 to 3 to you. Questions, ladies and gentlemen? Comments? Concluding plenaries. What would you say, folks? I'm looking at Chris, who's quite able to unmute herself. I think, unless she's in the middle of a courtroom where the judge will accuse her of something. Oh, she can't. Okay. Fair enough. Got that message. And Andrew's obviously got commitments, so he can't. And our Faxad has joined us, but we haven't heard from him. But I don't think he's muted. And that leaves Tamara. Emily, have you got any concluding thoughts or comments or questions? All good? All good. Tamara?
Just in regards to the last couple of slides, I know I personally don't, but everyone I know also doesn't either. We don't sort of tend to look at ourselves enough. Like when something's going wrong, we tend not to look at ourselves and go, okay, why am I unhappy in this situation? Why am I? We tend not to overhaul. We sort of try to grit our teeth and ride through it.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
And there's a time for that. Sure.
I've noticed we tend not to reflect as often as perhaps maybe we should.
Well, Tamara, I think this is what this course is about. It's so uniquely different from any other course you'll do. It's entirely the self-reflective educator and building, I hope and pray, a habit of mind and a habit of operation that you just, it becomes second nature to you, if it's not already, not to be introspective and navel gazing and worried, but that you are in touch with your inner self and not divorced from your real self. I'm reflecting on the assignments I've marked in this subject, and the good ones are the ones where people really know themselves and they know why they're doing what they're doing. The poorer assignments are ones where people haven't really dug and don't really know themselves, and just they go through life arguably in a more superficial way. Now, for the long haul, my concern is that you don't burn out and you don't become a shipwreck, but you get through and you have an incredibly fulfilled, productive life as a teacher. Oh, Chris is wanting to say something. Go, Chris.
Yeah, I think the opportunity to reflect on our own person and our practice is something that, for me, probably has been something that I've learned as I've gone along. That it perhaps when I first started teaching and stuff, I was enthusiastic to change the world. The A plan was, I'm the doer. I'm going to get out there. Save the world this week, and next week we party. In fact, when I was at Bible college, I think it was our principal that basically sort of said, the training college principal said, our whole year was about changing the world in our first year after graduation, and then for the rest of our lives, we were just going to party and celebrate. What's come about is that I think probably as things have progressed, we probably have reflected more and learned that it's not actually about us, it's actually more about God, and it's more about listening and being prompted by the Holy Spirit. But I think the other, and realizing that the longer we sort of live and live out a commitment to care for this world and to care for the people that Jesus loves so very much, we realize that the unfinished business is less in the world and actually more in us as individuals, that there's unfinished business that says it's in our healing, it's in our strengthening, it's in our refinement and becoming more like Jesus, becoming more holy, that the world has changed. In our refinement, we become better salt and light to the world. So I don't have to actually change it. I just got to be the salt and the light. So I guess the party is still to come, but the party is about doing my best to be more refined as salt and light.
Very good. Thank you, Chris. Andrew?
Okay, well, I totally agree with Chris there, but talking about reflection, I remember listening to Ravi Zacharias, who said that, there are lots of people who are going to disagree with you, lots of people who are going to hurt you, But you have to do one thing. He said, you separate the person from their acts, from their choices, because you have to love the person. You may not like their choices, you may not like the decision. That's what you got to deal with, but you just love the person.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, what a good place. What a good place. So, look, News Forum, keep in touch with me, with each other, and with the newbies who will come on stream, wherever they happen to be. And there's a lot of them. Sadly, we haven't connected with anything like a quarter of the number of students that we've got in this subject. It's, I daren't look. Yes, I will. Just a shout out to the population of this subject. We have in Masters 18 and in Bachelors 3, but there may be more, but certainly 3. Okay, that's it from me. God bless. Keep in touch. Have an awesome week, what's left of it, and keep safe.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Blessings. Cheers all. See ya.